I tackle projects how I do for a reason, and I really hope that you guys do the same. We originally started with a fireplace looking like this, and then went over to framing it out, which was the end of part 1, and then it jumped into part 2 with us completing the fireplace entirely together, which I did that because I wanted to then design the living room off of the main fireplace, which is the main piece of the space. The living room makeover, which I think this is going to turn into green. We want to demo that wall. Wait.
It's my best friend.
Every single drop she tried to use before I go and get a little thing of paint tomorrow, but we literally just need one coat. The most awkward painted wall there ever was by the most beautiful broad ever. Okay, let's touch this guy up. Hey, will you paint for me? I was going to touch up this wall. You can see it's not very even. This blue tape also means that we're working on the squares. I can't finish. The blue tape is from a Squarespace video where Lindsay calls me out on everything that's not finished. But it's funny because there's actually more that I haven't finished. So I'm gonna do that while she just pulls the couch away and we prep to paint. The first piece of advice that I give to anybody when it comes to, oh, what do I do to my space? Paint it. Find a color that you love, switch up the tone. It's going to switch up the energy. It will switch up how you feel when you walk into it. And what I'm loving about Holly's house are these natural wood tones and these greens that she's pulling in, because I promise you after this living room makeover, you'll see how simple an accent wall with this green shade, the name is escaping me, I've linked it down below for you, can really just make all the difference of making a space look less harsh. 3 tips for people that are just starting to paint. You better set aside way more time than you think. Like, you're like, oh, I'm gonna paint this in a couple of hours. False. It takes a couple hours for the paint to like fully dry for you to add another layer on top of it. And I do 3 trimming coats and 3 full wall coats with my roller. And that it honestly takes me 2 days to paint any type of room. Tip number 2, which I personally think is a non-negotiable after how many rooms that I have done, is grab a buddy. It makes it way better. It makes it way more fun. And if you guys are truly best friends, like Lindsay and I over here, we'll have a great conversation and the day kind of flies by. We might have to touch up the lines a little bit because it might be a little bit wonky, but I think when you turn painting into being fun, that's what is going to make you not so deflated from the space, because painting is not fun. I don't know who thinks it is, but I hate it. My third tip, and I believe this carries over into everything that I even do on my channel here with you guys, is do not beat yourself up, please, because painting a wall sounds easy enough, but if you look at any connection of color to white on my ceiling, there is a little bit of a wonkiness because we're human. We're going to keep going back and touching up what we think is straight or isn't straight, and then when you step back, it's a little bit wavy. Don't freak out. Just keep pushing through. Nobody's going to look up and be like, oh my God, I'm not entering your house because your paint lines are wonky. Speaking of people judging with their eyes, you do need to protect those eyes regardless and kick those people out if they are. And that is why I have partnered up with my friends over at Felix Gray. Now, we actually have partnered up with them before, and I have used their glasses ever since to save my tired eyes from the amount of screen time that I've had lately. There are a lot of blue light glasses on the market, but they're not all created equal, and that is where Felix Gray is different. They use their own proprietary lens technology to filter out more than the competition where it matters most. And that is why I like to wear my Felix Grays, is because of the amount of screen time that I have to be able to do the job that I do. And I know I'm not alone. That is the current day and age, my friends. My eyes get so tired and dry, and I just feel crusted and dusted when I'm just beaming at a screen. But when I do put on my Hamiltons that I love so much, these are my tried and true personal favorites from Felix Gray, I do have to say my eyes don't get as tired, and I don't get as drowsy, draggy, whatever you want to say. I don't get as droopy. That's how I feel, and that's what I'm gonna say. If you guys are interested in getting your own Felix Grays, I have linked the Hamiltons that I am wearing down below alongside all their other varieties that they have for you. You're bound to find something that you love, and to protect your eyes from all this screen usage that we're getting over here, people. Thank you so much, Felix Gray, for sponsoring today's episode. But let's jump back in to refreshing this living room literally for about $0 because I had everything on hand. If you are looking for an easy build, there is something that I have done multiple times on my channel that makes a huge difference in any room, and it's an art ledge. So what you want to do is take 3 pieces of wood. You need a backing to hang it to the wall. The width or the depth of the shelf that you want will be your base, and then a little baby lip to keep everything in place. And now I am making this out of scrap wood. I just used my circular saw to cut it down to size, which is about 82 inches long for all 3 pieces. And then I used whatever scrap pieces I had available to create the actual like depth back in front of shelf. I will be using pocket holes to hold this all together. You can do whatever way you see fit, but I think this makes the most secure hold for an art ledge like this. I also have a full in-depth tutorial for you. I will link for you that I made a long time ago so you can see my OG style of shooting and filming and editing. Oh boy, not embarrassing at all. Anyways, I'm gonna sand those pieces down after adding pocket hole screws just to the bottom of the base of the shelf, because we're gonna screw in the pocket hole screws to the backing and to the front lip of the art shelf to pull this thing fully together. I added some wood glue along the lines of where the wood is going to be connecting and secured everything with those pocket hole screws. I then used my clamps to hold everything in place, and now I know I am using these wrong, people. You're supposed to put it on the bottom of whatever you are gluing together, as you see me do here, but you know, sometimes you gotta make it work if it's not working the way it should. Am I wrong? The trick to close the gaps that I have learned from my friend House of Timber is to add wood glue, go back in with the sawdust from the wood that you sanded down, and start to use that wood glue and sawdust mixture, rubbing it into the cracks to then fill it so that way it can stain accordingly, it will paint accordingly, and you're not just constantly using wood filler. Once that wood glue and sawdust mixture dries, you can go back in with some sandpaper and sand that down entirely until it is nice and smooth and those cracks are filled. After I was done sanding it, filling the gaps, I wiped everything down of the debris to ensure that I can then move on to adding the wood pre-stain conditioner without any of the dirt and debris with a foam brush and just really bring out that wood grain. I typically don't use pre-stain conditioner, but I figured why not just give it a go, see if we can make the most of the scrap wood that we're pulling together to create this shelf. I went in with a custom blend by Behr. It is a water-based wood stain that is called Dusty Terrarium. I will link it down below for you, but I am using their 3-part system on this, just as I did with the fireplace mantle, because I want to tie in that wood grain to like basically the back of the room to the front of the room to kind of find this equal balance. Once I let that dry overnight, I went back in with my right angle attachment and I pre-drilled holes for my screws that lined up with the studs in my wall. The reason I'm doing this, oh my god, look at that little scab on my face. I ran into a piece of wood and almost took my eye out. Anyways, I like to line up anything when I'm hanging a long shelf like this. I like to ensure that anything I am screwing into the wall goes directly into a stud. That is going to give you the most support, secure hold. Drywall anchors are a little bit faulty in my opinion. I don't have the best luck every single time. So if I can find a stud 110%, I will drill into it. Making it level is another thing. You can level the middle with one screw, or you can like tack in the shelf into the middle stud and then level it out side by side. If you're hanging it alone, that is actually a tip that you guys gave me. And then I started to reposition different decor that we already had in the house. Obviously, I'm adding a little bit of a fall theme because in California we don't get seasons and it kills me. So I'm gonna add seasons where I can, but again, not have it be overwhelming because that's not our shtick over here. There are a couple of DIYs that I will implement into this wall decor, and one is framing this print that I picked up in Utah in glass and some poplar 1x2s, but making it look like it is floating. I wanted to find the middle of my 1x2, which is 3/4 of an inch, and I measured that out to go onto my table saw, but I actually lowered my saw to be maybe half of the depth of the actual 1x2 because we are going to create a groove where the glass, the picture, everything is going to slide into to create the quote-unquote floating frame. I ran that along my table saw on both sides to create that little channel, and you can see there's a little thin piece of wood going through each of those pieces. All you have to do is go in with a chisel, to take that out, and now we have that groove that will secure the artwork that we would like to showcase. But before we're putting the frame together, what you need to do is miter, well, you don't need to do it if you don't have a miter saw, but I kind of want to take my framing game up, so I'm going to miter the edges at a 45-degree angle, so when we put it all together, it has that frame look versus like the straight edge overlapping that I've done before. Once all of my 4 pieces are mitered down, that is when I start to break out the glass, and I like to try to handle it to get as least fingerprints on it as possible, but that is just not what ends up happening, at least on my end, even when I try to be overly cautious. I'm not cutting down this glass. You can if you need to. There are glass cutters online. I highly suggest getting one that is a little bit more expensive because the cheaper ones will do you dirty for sure. I like to tape the artwork onto the back piece of glass first prior to adding the top piece and thinking it's not going to shift when I am inserting it into the DIY frame. So that is what you see me do here. But if you want to be risque, go ahead and freeball it over there with no tape. After I have the artwork exactly where I'd like it in the glass, I raise that up with some painter's cones that you can get from Home Depot, and I use that as the workstation to then kind of fit the groove of each side of the frame onto each side of the glass, as I held it in place with painter's tape because my clamp was just not working. Once I had that all in place and I glued the sides together and it started to stick, that's when I went in with my larger clamps to absolutely just make sure that it was held in place overnight to dry nice and securely. After I let that dry overnight, I did go in with my pin nailer just to ensure that everything was nice and secure the following day. I didn't add hardware to it because I am not hanging it on a wall. I'll be leaning it on this shelf, but that was my first DIY that I did for this little art ledge. For the next DIY, I saw this cute boy recently fail a bunch of times at making this mirror, but it ended up really gorgeous, and his original inspiration was from With Wendy, so I wanted to kind of blend the two and create my own version of that mirror. The cute boy ended up being in town, and he ended up giving me a hands-on DIY tutorial of how to get the arch mirror that I wanted. He had this great idea of putting a tack in the middle of a piece of cardboard with tape and a pencil on the other end and creating a circle template that way. I don't know where he was when I was doing my closet circle. That failed so miserably, but this is a great tip for anybody, and I don't know why I didn't know this. We then used that template to create the top arch of the mirror, or at least that's what we wanted it to be, and then created straight lines with a straight edge going down each side to give a great outline of where we needed to use the actual glass cutter. Like I mentioned before on the wall art we just did, you want to invest in a nicer glass cutter, and that is because if you don't, you're going to get what you pay for. And when you cut glass, you don't want to go over the line that you're doing multiple times. You want to try to do one line the entire way across. So if you lift up the glass cutter, try to go right back where you ended it and continue it from there, but don't cross over. We were going to make these little offshoot lines to see if it cut a little bit more nicely, but that just wasn't the case. I wonder if we didn't do that, if it would have come out perfect.
That's loose.
Oh, we can do the split idea. We have to now. Oh no!
No! No wonder you went through so much bad luck.
When I went to crack it, I could see where all your hope just gets instantly smashed because you think you're doing it the right way, and then it just splits right on you, and then there you go. You got some bad luck, just like Shmoxd. After it broke, you know what I like to do. I tried to use what is broken to turn it into something beautiful, but then... Clank. Ah!
What?
I just broke it. That is where I had my knight in shining DIY come in. Shmoxd is out here just spending some lovely time in California with me, and he wanted to take it upon himself to make it work. So he went through the process that he has already done before, but he did it his way, breaking it on the back end, which I refused to do earlier, and I bet you it would have worked this way. And he started to cut it up into 3 tiny rectangles and then creating an arch on each of those with the similar process that we just did, just a little bit literally backwards because we're doing it on the back end. He took his time just drawing out the arches like we did previously, and then using the scissors on the back end to kind of score it before he cracked it on the front end with the proper tool that I have. I've linked everything down below for you. Something that I thought was really smart is we went and got a higher grit sandpaper, and he just spent honestly like an hour fine tuning the edges and rounding them. That way if I were to grab them or anyone were to grab them, it wouldn't like slice their hands, because just glass in general, if you're cutting it and then you're grabbing the edges, it is so ridiculously sharp, you have no idea. As Mr. Shmoxd was finishing up those mirrors, I was able to add the details from Holly's house that she pulled for me that she would like to showcase on this main wall, which of course has to do with her dad. And this is a number one reason why Holly and I are so close, is how much we love our dad. So I was just placing decor here and there, leaving the wall on the blanker side that didn't have the actual art ledge. Like I didn't hang anything up on that wall yet because I might add plants to a different corner. And truth be told, again, this isn't my space, and I have a really fun chapter coming up, so I kind of want to leave Holly's house so she can grow into it and move things around and really make it hers, because I know it's a little bit difficult when Rachel Metz is in your house and I am constantly flipping it and constantly decorating. It almost feels like I'm taking over her home, and that is not what I'm trying to do. That is kind of why I went with the art ledge situation, because when I do leave, she can take everything off and just kind of replace what she wants to and theme it if she'd like to. And the living room can be somewhere that can progress with her versus it having to be an overhaul all the time. That's why I'm a really big fan of the art ledge situation. I did not swap out the couch, the side table, or the coffee table. All I did was add a couple of accent pillows to incorporate that black and white from the dining area into here, and then a couple other of greens because that is the theme that is going on in her household. And I realistically only spent maybe $100, and I don't even think I did because half the pillows that I had I owned previously. It's really crazy what can happen when you readjust your decor in your house. You pull back and pull it into a space that you're using the most, because sometimes I'll have like that walk-in closet fully decorated, but realistically nobody's really going in there, so I'll pull some decor out of there into the spaces that we are having the most people. That's a little fun fact for you. It's pretty crazy with 4 little DIYs, 1 being paint, 2 being the art ledge, 3 being that DIY wall art, and then the 4th being the DIY mirrors. Everything else was already what we had on hand. We just incorporated 4 new things to the space, and it feels like a completely new area. And I really hope you take away one bit of inspiration. Thank you so much again to Felix Gray for sponsoring today's episode. If you guys want to check out their blue light glasses, I have linked them down below for you. But until the next DIY, keep on DIYing. Don't get scared of the unknown. If you haven't done it before, just go for it and just execute it to see how you feel. I'll see you soon, guys.